I've always been good at reading silence. For years, I trusted the rhythm of my marriage, the comfort of Harry's footsteps at the door, the way we used to talk about nothing and everything after dinner. But lately, the silence between us grew louder than the words we spoke. His eyes wouldn't stay on mine. His hand, once warm, felt like it was only going through the motions, and my gut kept telling me what my heart didn't want to face. Something was off. It started with the late nights. Harry always had an explanation. Too polished, too perfect. Working late, he'd say, though his shirt smelled faintly of something that wasn't paper or ink. Out with the guys, but the laughter he brought home felt brittle, hollow, like it belonged to someone else. I told myself I was imagining things, that maybe I was just tired, but doubt doesn't vanish. It clings. It gnaws at you in the quiet moments, when you're folding laundry or rinsing a glass, whispering that you already know the truth. That night, I had plans. Dinner with a friend, a chance to distract myself, to play pretend for a few hours. But as I stood in front of the mirror, something inside me froze. No, I couldn't leave. Not tonight. Tonight, I needed to stay. So, instead of reaching for my coat, I reached for the wine. I poured a glass, sat at the kitchen table, and let the clock keep me company. Every tick felt like a countdown to the moment I'd finally see what he was hiding. I sat there with the wine glass in my hand, watching the liquid catch the kitchen light. The house felt different that night, too still, almost like it was holding its breath with me. I kept glancing at the front door, half expecting it to swing open, half dreading what I might see if it did. My thoughts ran wild, weaving scenarios I didn't want to imagine, each one heavier than the last. And yet, deep down, I knew my imagination wasn't far from the truth. I thought about the woman I used to be, the one who laughed with him over burnt pancakes on Sundays, who believed his promises without question. That version of me had been fading, day by day, replaced by someone sharper, someone who listened to the pauses between his words more than the words themselves. I didn't ask for this transformation, but betrayal has a way of chiseling you into someone new, even before you have proof. And sitting there, I could feel that proof inching closer. The wine warmed my throat, but it didn't quiet the storm inside me. I traced my finger along the rim of the glass, the soft hum vibrating in the silence like a warning. I wondered if he thought I'd be asleep by the time he got home, or if he even cared anymore. What he didn't know was that I was awake, alert, and waiting. I wasn't planning a fight. Not yet. I was planning to see, to catch the truth without asking for it. Because sometimes the truth doesn't need to be spoken. It walks through the door all on its own. I leaned back in my chair, the stem of the glass resting between my fingers, and let the minutes stretch into hours. Every sound from outside, a car door slamming, footsteps on the pavement, made my heart skip. I told myself not to jump at shadows, but my body didn't listen. My chest tightened each time, as if preparing me for the moment I knew was coming. Waiting became its own kind of torture, but also a strange kind of strength. The kitchen clock ticked louder than it ever had before. Each second seemed to mark a distance growing between us, a space that could never be closed again. I thought about asking him directly, demanding the truth. But what good were words when actions were already telling me everything I needed to know? I didn't want rehearsed excuses. I wanted reality to walk in through that door, uninvited and undeniable. So I sat there, calm on the outside, storming on the inside, and held onto that glass of wine like it was an anchor. I told myself I wouldn't look away when the truth finally arrived. I would meet it head-on, no matter how much it hurt. Because sometimes, the only way to move forward is to stop running from the moment that changes everything. And I could feel that moment approaching, closer with every tick of the clock. Hours slipped by, though I barely noticed. The wine bottle grew lighter, but I wasn't drinking to forget. I was drinking to stay steady. The house was so quiet that even the hum of the refrigerator felt loud, the tick of the clock sharp enough to cut through the silence. My eyes stayed fixed on the door, waiting, bracing. And then, finally, I heard it. The scrape of a key sliding into the lock. My whole body went rigid. I straightened in my chair, gripping the glass just tightly enough to keep my hand from shaking. My heart pounded in my chest, faster than the seconds the clock kept spitting out. There was no mistaking it. That was Harry. The sound of his footsteps, the familiar shuffle of his shoes, it was all the same. But something about the rhythm felt off, as though he wasn't alone. My gut clenched. The door creaked open, spilling a slice of night air into the hallway. And then I saw him. Harry stood there, framed in the doorway. But he wasn't alone. A woman lingered just half a step behind him, her hair falling forward as if she wished she could hide her face. They both froze when they saw me, sitting at the table with my glass of wine, waiting. My eyes locked on his, and in that silence, I knew the truth had finally walked through the door. For a moment, none of us moved. It was as if time itself had stopped, holding its breath along with us. Harry's face drained of color, his jaw tightening like he was caught in headlights he couldn't escape. The woman shifted uncomfortably, her eyes darting between me and him, as though she had walked into a crime scene she hadn't signed up for. My hand stayed steady on the glass, though every muscle in me was bracing for impact. I let the silence linger, because silence can be louder than any scream. Harry opened his mouth, but no words came out, just a pathetic gasp, as though excuses had abandoned him right when he needed them most. The woman stammered something I couldn't even catch, her voice small, weak, already apologizing to no one in particular. They both looked at me, waiting for the explosion. But I had no intention of giving them that. Inside, my heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst through my chest, but on the outside, I was composed. Calm. That calmness wasn't weakness. It was power. I wasn't the one who had something to explain, after all. It was Harry, standing there with shame written all over his face, and her, shrinking behind him like a shadow. They had walked into my home, into my silence, and I was the one holding the stage. I didn't flinch. I didn't rise from my chair. I simply lifted the glass to my lips and let the wine touch my mouth, never breaking eye contact with him. The taste was bitter, but it steadied me. Harry swallowed hard, like he was choking on his own guilt. He looked smaller than I'd ever seen him, stripped of every excuse before he could even try to form one. The woman tugged lightly at his sleeve, whispering something I couldn't hear, but I didn't need to. Her body language spoke volumes. She wanted to disappear. She hadn't expected me to be here. Neither of them had. That was their mistake, assuming I wouldn't notice, assuming I wouldn't fight the instinct that told me to stay home. They had underestimated me, and now, here we were. I let the silence stretch until it felt unbearable, then leaned forward, setting my glass gently on the table. The sound echoed through the room like a verdict. I didn't need to raise my voice. My presence, my composure, said enough. They had walked straight into their own confession, and all I had to do was sit there and watch. And the best part? I wasn't the one unraveling. They were. I didn't scream. I didn't throw the glass. That's what he expected. Maybe even what she expected too. Some kind of chaotic outburst that would make me look unhinged, dramatic, irrational. Instead, I swirled the wine in my hand, watching the red circle lazily around the glass. Then I looked at him, at her, and I spoke the words that tasted sharper than any insult. I see you brought someone to share our home with. Should I pour her a glass too? The woman's cheeks burned crimson. She muttered something that sounded like an apology, fumbling with her purse as though escape was her only option. Harry reached for her arm, trying to steady the scene, but his eyes were locked on me. Mia, listen, he stammered, his voice cracking. It's not what it looks like. The words were so predictable, so cliché, I almost laughed. And then I did. It wasn't the laugh of a woman amused. It was bitter, hollow, sharp enough to slice through the heavy air between us, because of course it was exactly what it looked like. My laughter seemed to rattle him more than anger would have. His jaw clenched tighter, his eyes flickered with desperation, but he couldn't move past the truth hanging between us. And as I sat there, still holding my glass of wine, I realized the balance of power had already shifted. He was begging me to believe a lie, but I wasn't begging for anything anymore. Harry's voice cracked again as he reached a hand toward me, palm open like he was trying to calm a wild animal. But I wasn't the one out of control. He was. "Mia, please, just hear me out," he said, desperation dripping from every syllable. I tilted my head, studying him the way you'd study a stranger caught sneaking through your window. That's what he felt like to me in that moment, a stranger wearing my husband's face. The woman shifted closer to the door, her shame making her invisible, but I didn't take my eyes off Harry. His lips kept moving, strings of excuses spilling out, tangled and meaningless. I heard words like confused and complicated, and I didn't mean for this to happen. Each one fell flat, clattering to the ground like broken glass. I let him speak, because the longer he tried, the smaller he became in my eyes. Finally, I leaned back in my chair and shook my head slowly, almost like I pitied him. "You want me to believe you?" I asked softly, my voice steadier than I felt inside. "You brought her through our door. You didn't slip up, Harry. You chose this." His mouth opened, but nothing came out. The silence that followed was heavier than any shout, and for the first time, he seemed to realize there was no saving himself from the truth standing right in front of him. I could see it in his eyes, the panic, the scramble for a version of the story that might make me stay. He was grasping at air, trying to stitch together excuses from threads that had already unraveled. The more he talked, the more I realized how little his words meant. All the promises he once made, the vows he spoke years ago, they dissolved in the same breath he used to defend this betrayal. The woman tried again to leave, her voice a whisper. Maybe I should go. She didn't belong here, and she knew it. But Harry clung to her presence like a shield, as if somehow I'd forget what I was looking at if she vanished. I almost wanted to tell her to run, not out of mercy, but because her shame wasn't mine to carry. I wasn't here to fight her. My battle was with the man who had dragged her across our threshold. I set my glass down slowly, letting the sound cut through his pathetic rambling. Then I leaned forward, my voice low but sharp. "Don't insult me by pretending this isn't what it looks like." His face twisted, caught between anger and fear, and for a split second I saw the mask slip. That was the truth I'd been waiting for. Not the excuses, not the stammering, but the raw, ugly fear of a man finally realizing he had no control left. That's when his desperation snapped. His voice, once pleading, grew sharp, cutting through the air like broken glass. "You've been distant, Mia. You shut me out. What did you expect me to do?" he shouted, his words ricocheting against the walls of our home. I felt the heat rise in my chest, a fury I'd been holding back finally surging forward. He wanted to rewrite the story, paint himself as the victim. But not this time. I slammed my glass down on the table, the echo ringing like a gavel. "Distant?" I spat, my voice trembling with rage. "I built this life for us while you were sneaking around like a coward." The words scorched my throat as they left me, but I didn't hold them back. He flinched, not because he felt guilt, but because I was no longer the quiet, forgiving wife he'd counted on. I wasn't swallowing his excuses anymore. The woman tried to cut in, her hands lifted like she was stepping between two flames. "Maybe we should stop," she started, but I cut her off with a glare that could have frozen fire. "Stay out of this," I hissed. "You knew he was married the moment you walked through that door." Her mouth closed instantly, shame pulling her shoulders in. The room crackled with tension, every word sharpening into a blade, and for the first time, Harry realized I wasn't afraid to use mine. Harry's face twisted, red blotches spreading across his skin as he pointed a shaking finger at me. "You never understood me, Mia," he barked, his voice cracking under the weight of his own lies. "You don't see me anymore. I deserve better than this, better than you." His words hit like a slap, but instead of breaking me, they ignited something deeper, a rage laced with clarity. I rose from my chair, every nerve in my body on fire. My hands trembled, not with fear, but with the weight of everything I'd swallowed down for years. "Better?" I shot back, my voice shaking the walls. You think you deserve better while standing in front of me with her? You don't deserve the roof over your head or the air in your lungs if betrayal is all you can offer in return. The sharpness of my words left him momentarily stunned. He tried to match my fury, shouting back, his words jumbled and angry, but they fell flat in the face of my resolve. For once, I wasn't the one shrinking under his volume. I wasn't cowering, I wasn't begging. I was standing taller than I ever had before, every ounce of pain I carried burning into strength. And in that storm of accusations, I felt something shift inside me. I wasn't trying to save this anymore. I was done. His voice thundered through the house, but I heard nothing but the emptiness in his words. He kept hurling accusations, desperate to twist the blame, but each one slid off me like rain on glass. I saw the veins straining in his neck, the spit at the corners of his mouth, the wildness in his eyes. This wasn't love. This wasn't even remorse. This was a man terrified of losing control. And he already had. I stood firm, my fists clenched at my sides, my pulse racing but steady enough to keep me anchored. You don't scare me, Harry, I said, my voice low, almost calm now. Not anymore. For the first time in years, I saw the shock ripple across his face, as though he realized the woman he had counted on to forgive, to stay, to fold, no longer existed. He was shouting at a ghost of the past, and the ghost wasn't listening. The argument spiraled, words crashing and colliding, but I no longer needed to win. I already had. I didn't raise my voice again. I didn't need to. He could scream until the walls cracked, but nothing he said mattered, because in the middle of his fury, I felt a strange calm settling in me. I was finished. He just hadn't realized yet that the war was already over. And then, just like that, his anger burned itself out. He stood there panting, red-faced, fists still balled but empty of fight. I watched him unravel, the man who once pretended to be unshakable now looking like a child caught in his own mess. My breathing slowed, my chest loosened, and a surprising calm spread through me. The storm had passed, not around me, but inside me. I reached for my glass, the same one that had been my anchor all night, and raised it with a steadiness that felt almost ceremonial. Harry's eyes darted to it, maybe expecting me to throw it, maybe praying I wouldn't. But no, there would be no scene, no chaos, no spectacle for him to twist against me later. Only truth, simple and sharp. I let the rim touch my lips and took one final sip. Setting the glass down, I met his eyes and said clearly, "You ruined yourself the moment you brought her through that door." My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. It carried the weight of everything he'd destroyed without me lifting a finger. Then I stood, the chair legs scraping softly against the floor, and turned toward the door. Every step felt lighter, as though I was shedding years of silence with each movement. Behind me, I heard his voice crack, softer now, almost broken. "Mia, wait, please." But I didn't stop. His begging came too late, and even if it had come sooner, it wouldn't have mattered. He had chosen this path long before tonight, long before I sat at that table with my glass of wine. His words followed me like smoke, but I refused to let them cling. I was already stepping into air that felt clearer than it had in years. The woman didn't say a word. She stood frozen, as if she had just realized she was nothing more than a piece in his game, a distraction that had already lost its shine. I didn't look at her, because she wasn't my concern. My life wasn't bound to her. My vows weren't with her. She would deal with the pieces she'd chosen to hold. But me? I was done carrying pieces that weren't mine. I reached the front door, my hand steady on the knob, and pulled it open. Cool night air rushed in, washing over me like a baptism. For the first time in so long, I felt weightless, like I was finally stepping out of a cage I hadn't even realized I'd been trapped in. And as the door clicked shut behind me, I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't leaving in defeat. I was leaving free. The night wrapped around me as I stepped onto the porch, the quiet so different from the chaos I had left behind. I filled my lungs with the cool air, and it felt like I was breathing for the first time in years. My hands no longer trembled. My heart, though raw, beat steady and strong. Behind those walls, shame and ruin clung to Harry, but out here, under the open sky, I belonged only to myself. I pictured him standing there, stunned and hollow, with her at his side, both of them left in the wreckage of their choices. That house, once our sanctuary, had turned into a prison the moment he opened the door with her. And now it wasn't my prison anymore. The weight of it all stayed behind with them, heavy and suffocating. I walked away lighter, stripped of illusions but stronger in truth. At the end of the driveway, I turned back just once, the windows glowing faintly like the last embers of a fire I no longer cared to tend. I whispered to myself, "It's done." And in that whisper, I found closure. I wasn't his anymore, and he wasn't mine. What he had destroyed could never be rebuilt, and I didn't want it to be. Because I finally understood. Walking away wasn't weakness, it was victory. Weeks passed, and the silence that once haunted me became my peace. Harry tried to claw his way back into my life. Late-night calls, desperate texts, promises he should have made years ago. I didn't answer. His words were ashes now, and I had no interest in breathing them back to life. Each message only reminded me of how far I had come, how free I felt without him. I heard whispers through the neighborhood, the kind of gossip that used to sting but now felt like justice. "Did you hear what happened the night Harry brought another woman home?" Mia was waiting. The story carried on its own, twisting into legend, and I didn't need to defend myself. My silence spoke louder than any explanation could. People knew, and more importantly, he knew. Meanwhile, I was thriving. My skin glowed, my laugh returned, my days felt lighter. I started making choices for myself again, small ones, like buying flowers just because I wanted to, or sleeping diagonally across the bed without apology. Freedom wasn't loud or flashy. It was quiet, steady, and mine. And every time I caught my reflection, I saw a woman who had walked through fire and refused to let the smoke claim her. Harry's life, on the other hand, began to unravel quickly. The woman he had dragged into our home left him soon after, realizing she was nothing more than a temporary distraction. His friends pulled away too, tired of the lies, the drama, the mess he had created. The man who once carried himself like he was untouchable now walked the streets smaller, older, diminished. He had gambled everything and lost. I would sometimes see him from a distance, his shoulders hunched, his steps heavy. He looked like a ghost of the man I used to know. And yet, instead of feeling pity, I felt something else, relief. His downfall wasn't mine to mourn. It was his burden, his punishment, his consequence. For once, the weight was exactly where it belonged, and while his world grew darker, mine kept expanding. I found laughter in new places, comfort in unexpected corners of my life. Friends rallied around me, reminding me of the woman I'd always been, the one he had tried to dim. I realized that my greatest revenge wasn't his pain. It was my joy. Every smile, every step forward was proof that I had won by leaving. One evening at a neighborhood gathering, I caught the looks, the hushed voices. People leaned in, whispering, "That's Mia. She's the one who was waiting when Harry walked in with another woman." Their eyes weren't filled with pity. They were filled with awe. I didn't need to correct them, didn't need to tell my side. The truth had already carved itself into their memory. Later that night, I stood in my new home, a place untouched by betrayal, and poured myself a glass of wine. The liquid caught the soft glow of the lamp, rich and steady, just like me. I raised it, not in anger, not in bitterness, but in quiet celebration. Walking away hadn't broken me, it had rebuilt me. Every sip was a reminder of the strength I had claimed back as my own. And as I looked out the window, the night air brushing cool against my skin, I smiled. Harry was alone now, drowning in the silence he had created, while I was free, lighter than I had ever been. I didn't need to scream, beg, or fight for him. My silence, my calm exit, had been the sharpest revenge of all. And with that thought, I lifted my glass higher and whispered to myself, I won.